Imagine you are standing on a balcony in the middle of a warm August night. The air is still, and the world below you is a tapestry of electric orange streetlights and the distant hum of a civilization that never sleeps. You look up, searching for the familiar constellations, the comfort of the North Star, or the steady blink of a passing airplane. But you notice something that was not there last summer. A pinprick of light, fixed and motionless, directly above the horizon. It does not twinkle, it does not drift, it simply exists. This is not a star, and it is no longer a secret. On July 14th, 2025, the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, known to the world as ATLAS, registered an arrival that broke every model of orbital mechanics we possess. They named it 3I Atlas, the third interstellar visitor ever recorded. But unlike its predecessors, which tumbled through our solar system like lonely ghosts, 3I Atlas stopped. It matched the rotation of the Earth with a precision that should terrify every astronomer on the planet. This is where the official story begins to fray at the edges. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was among the first to point out the math that didn't add up. On August 22nd, 2025, her team noted that the object's velocity dropped from 42 kilometers per second to a perfect synchronized hover in less than 6 hours. To achieve that kind of deceleration without shattering into a billion pieces of cosmic dust requires a structural integrity that nature does not provide. It suggests a propulsion system that operates on a frequency we are only beginning to theorize. Then there is the matter of the mass. The European Space Agency reported that while the object appears to be only 400 meters in diameter, its gravitational influence is equivalent to a mountain made of solid lead. It is dense, it is heavy, and it is sitting exactly where it wants to be. But let us look at the first impossibility, the light reflection. On September 9th, 2025, telescopes in Chile observed that 3I Atlas does not reflect sunlight like a rock. It modulates it. The light coming off its surface pulses at exactly 60 Hertz. That is the same frequency as the power grid in your home. It is as if the object is trying to blend into our electronic background noise, humming a lullaby to our satellites so they don't notice it is slowly moving closer. The second impossibility surfaced in October. Amateur astronomers began noticing that when 3I Atlas passes between Earth and more distant stars, those stars don't just dim, they distort. The light bends in a perfect circle around the object, a phenomenon known as gravitational lensing. This usually only happens near black holes or entire galaxies. For an object the size of a stadium to bend light this way, it would need to contain the mass of a small moon. What if we are looking at this all wrong? What if 3I Atlas isn't an observer at all, but a precursor? If you wanted to reshape a planet, you wouldn't start with a bang. You would start by installing a new set of rules, a new gravity, a new frequency. You would place a silent architect in the sky and wait for the inhabitants to stop looking up. It's an unfortunate bit of timing for us. Really, those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of heavy lifting in the halls of NASA right now. We spent 70 years looking for radio signals from light years away, while the real conversation was happening in a silent orbit right over our heads. There is a resonance here that feels older than our science. In the clay tablets of the late Babylonian period, there are descriptions of a hidden throne that appears in the sky every few thousand years to measure the breadth of the world. They called it the Silent Watcher. They believed that when the Watcher appeared, the tides would change, not because of the moon, but because the Earth was tensing its muscles in fear. We see these same patterns in the oral traditions of the indigenous peoples of the Pacific, who spoke of a second sun that stayed cool to the touch and watched the fires of men from above. It seems humanity has a long history of being scrutinized by things that do not speak. You might think we are overanalyzing a simple piece of space debris, but here is why you are wrong. Space debris does not adjust its altitude to compensate for the shifting of the Earth's crust. Space debris does not absorb 99% of the radar pings sent toward it. We are not looking at a rock, we are looking at an activation. We are the subjects of a study that began long before we had the tools to understand we were being watched. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. We are standing at the edge of a countdown we didn't know started. By October 29th, 2025, 3i Atlas will have been in orbit for over 100 days. In that time, it hasn't sent a single message to our governments. It hasn't made a single threat. It has simply sat there, heavy and silent, like a shadow waiting for the sun to move. We may already be part of the experiment. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The evidence does not just deepen, it solidifies into something uncomfortable. If we look at the data from November 3rd, 2025, we find a report from the Mauna Kea Observatory that should have made front-page news. They found that 3i Atlas is not a solid object. It is a hollow shell, and inside that shell, there is a source of energy radiating at a frequency of 14.2 gigahertz. For those of you who aren't radio engineers, that is the hydrogen line. It is the universal frequency for interstellar communication, but it isn't communicating with us. The signal is pointed inward, toward the core of the Earth. It is as if the object is whispering to the planet's molten heart, bypassing our atmosphere and our satellites entirely. Let us sit with that image for a moment. A hollow sphere, 400 meters across, hovering in the silent blackness, focusing a beam of pure information directly through the crust, through the mantle, and into the iron center of our world. It is an unfortunate bit of timing for our global communication networks. We spent trillions of dollars building fiber optic cables and 5G towers, thinking we were the ones controlling the flow of data. But 3i Atlas is speaking a language that doesn't need a receiver made by human hands. It is using the Earth itself as a hard drive. Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard has been careful to frame this as a possibility, a techno-signature that warrants further study. He suggests it could be a discarded piece of foreign technology, a galactic drift net that happened to snag on our gravity. But his caution feels like a thin veil for a much darker reality. If 3i Atlas is a piece of technology, it is one that possesses a sense of humor, albeit a very dry, cold one. On November 12th, 2025, the object performed a maneuver that experts called mathematically impossible. It swapped its orbital inclination with the International Space Station for exactly 12 minutes, before returning to its original position. It was a flex, a quiet, cosmic shrug to let us know that our most advanced structures are merely toys in its playground. Those 12 minutes were doing a lot of heavy lifting for the physicists who previously thought they understood inertia. Now, consider the composition, spectroscopic analysis, conducted by the James Webb Space Telescope on November 19, 2025, reveals traces of elements that do not appear on the periodic table. They are stable isotopes of super-heavy elements that, according to our current understanding of physics, should decay in milliseconds. And yet, they are there, shimmering on the surface of 3I Atlas like a coat of oil on water. This is not natural physics. This is an invitation to realize how little we actually know. We are like ants trying to understand the blueprint of a skyscraper by crawling over a single, anomalous brick. What if the takeover isn't about land or resources? What if it's about the very concept of time? On December 1st, 2025, atomic clocks at the National Institute of Standards and Technology recorded a deviation of 3 nanoseconds, only in the vicinity of 3I Atlas. It is dragging time. It is creating a localized field where the seconds pass differently. If you can control the rate at which time flows, you don't need to fire a single shot. You can simply wait for your enemies to age into dust while you remain suspended in a single, perfect, frozen moment. There is an old Norse myth about the world tree, Yggdrasil, and the eagle that sits at its highest branch to watch the 4 winds. The eagle doesn't interfere, it simply observes, and through its observation, the world maintains its shape. 3I Atlas feels like that eagle, a cold, metallic bird of prey perched on the highest branch of our gravity, making sure the winds of human ambition don't blow too hard. When the Vikings saw a falling star that stayed in the sky, they called it the Eye of the Winter, a sign that the gods were weighing the souls of the living. It is a heavy thought to carry into your sleep. You might think we are over-analyzing a simple piece of space debris, but here is why you are wrong. Space debris does not adjust its altitude to compensate for the shifting of the Earth's crust. Space debris does not absorb 99% of the radar pings sent toward it. We are not looking at a rock. We are looking at an activation. By mid-December 2025, the data became even more specific. The thermal signature we discussed, that perfect 0 degrees Celsius, began to fluctuate. But it didn't fluctuate randomly. It moved in a sequence of prime numbers: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. It was a countdown whispered in the language of thermodynamics. Imagine you are one of the technicians at the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex. You are sitting in a darkened room, surrounded by the hum of cooling fans and the glow of liquid crystal displays. You send a signal to 3I Atlas, a simple hello, encoded in binary. The signal travels at the speed of light. It hits the object, and then, for 3 seconds, the entire facility loses power. When the backup generators kick in, you look at your screen. The object hasn't sent a message back. It has simply deleted your outgoing file from your local server. It didn't just ignore you. It reached back through the beam and silenced you. This is where the suspicion of a hostile takeover begins to feel less like a conspiracy and more like an observation. But hostile is a human word. A tidal wave isn't hostile. A landslide isn't hostile. They are simply manifestations of a higher energy state moving toward equilibrium. 3I Atlas is the equilibrium. We are the turbulence. You might feel safe under your roof, behind your locked doors, but remember that 3I Atlas sees through the roof. It sees the heat of your body, the electrical impulses of your brain, and the steady rhythm of your heart. It knows you are there. and it seems to be waiting for a specific number of us to realize it. Tell me, if you could send a single sentence up to that silver shadow, what would you say? Would you ask for help, or would you ask for more time? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us where you are listening from. Perhaps the signal is stronger in your part of the world. Perhaps you have seen the Atlas lights that travelers in northern latitudes have started reporting. There is a second report, dated December 28th, 2025, from the European Southern Observatory. They found that 3I Atlas is vibrating, not at a frequency you can hear, but at a frequency the Earth can feel, a low-frequency hum at 7.83 Hz. This is the Schumann resonance. It is the heartbeat of our planet's ionosphere. By mimicking this frequency, 3I Atlas isn't just sitting in our sky. It is plugging itself into the Earth's electromagnetic circuit. It is becoming a part of the weather. It is becoming a part of the lightning. Think about the implications of a machine that can control the resonance of the atmosphere. It could change the path of a hurricane with a single pulse. It could silence every radio on the planet with a thought. But it doesn't. It just hums. It sits there, heavy and silent, like a shadow waiting for the sun to move. We may already be part of the experiment. We are the variables in a long-form calculation that won't be solved for another 1,000 years. Dr. Jacqueline McClary recently noted that the hollow shell of the object seems to be growing thinner, not because it is dissolving, but because it is unfolding. Like a piece of cosmic origami, the fractal patterns on the surface are beginning to shift. They are opening up, revealing a darkness inside that is darker than the surrounding space. It is a blackness that doesn't just lack light, it seems to consume it. On January 5th, 2026, a small research satellite was sent to within 10 kilometers of the object. It didn't crash, it didn't explode, it simply stopped existing on our monitors. No debris, no signal, just a hole in reality, where $1 million piece of hardware used to be. This is the cliff of silence that the scientific community is currently staring over. We are trying to use the laws of the 20th century to explain a 21st century ghost. We are looking for engines when we should be looking for intent. What if the intent isn't to destroy us, but to archive us, to hold us in this state of suspended animation until the fleet arrives? The countdown continues. In just over 4 weeks, 3I Atlas will reach its perigee, its closest point to Earth. The calculations suggest it will be close enough to cast a shadow that can be measured by a handheld light meter. We are running out of days where we can pretend the sky is the same as it was in July. We are moving into a new season, the season of the Atlas. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the weight of the air in your room. Is it heavier than it was last year? Is the silence deeper? You aren't imagining it. The data shows a microscopic increase in atmospheric pressure globally since the arrival. 3I Atlas is pressing down on us, gently, firmly, like a hand on a shoulder, telling us to sit down and be quiet. It is an unfortunate timing for a species that loves to shout, but as we look closer at the hollow shell, we find something even more disturbing. In the infrared spectrum, there are shapes moving inside the object. Not biological shapes, not gears. They look like rivers of liquid light, flowing in patterns that mimic the neural pathways of a human brain. 3I Atlas isn't just a machine, it is a mind that is currently dreaming of us. And as you drift towards sleep, you must ask yourself, If the dreamer wakes up, what happens to the dream? But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. A myth that speaks of a time when the sky had two moons, and one of them was made of silver and secrets. Let's go further. The echoes from the past are becoming louder than the science of the present. As we moved into December 2025, historians began to notice a terrifying coincidence. Every 3,600 years, the archaeological record shows a sudden, unexplained leap in human technology, followed immediately by a total societal collapse. We saw it in the Indus Valley, we saw it with the Maya, and now, as 3i Atlas settles into its permanent home, we are seeing the leap again. We are suddenly obsessed with artificial intelligence, with quantum computing, with leaving the planet. It is as if we are being prompted, fed information by a silent teacher in the sky. This is the rhythmic, ceremonial heartbeat of our history, a cycle of growth and pruning that we are only now beginning to recognize. On December 12, 2025, a team of linguists working with the Smithsonian Institution released a preliminary analysis of the fractal patterns on the surface of 3i Atlas. They didn't find equations, they found syntax. Specifically, they found structural similarities to Proto-Sumerian cuneiform, the earliest form of writing known to man. It appears that the rock in our sky is written in the same language we used when we first learned how to count the stars. It is an unfortunate timing for our sense of original thought. We believed we invented writing to track grain and gold. It turns out we may have been mimicking the skin of our gardener. The Sumerian tablets speak of the Anunnaki, but they also speak of the Shem, the high stones that glowed with an internal fire. They described these stones as being capable of binding the earth to the heavens. On December 18, 2025, a seismic station in Antarctica picked up a vibration that matched the pulse of 3i Atlas. The object in space is vibrating in harmony with the planet's core. They are bound. We are no longer a solitary planet drifting through the void. We are a tethered world. We are a dog on a very long, very invisible leash, and the owner has just decided to shorten the slack. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. For centuries, we have debated its purpose. Was it a tomb? A power plant? A map? On December 24th, 2025, the winter solstice, 3i Atlas, positioned itself in a perfect zenith above the Giza Plateau. For 6 minutes, the shadow of the object fell exactly upon the apex of the pyramid. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a handshake across 5,000 years. It suggests that the pyramid was not built to look at the stars, but to wait for one specific star to return, a return cycle of 3,600 years. The math is haunting. It is the same number of years the Babylonians assigned to the orbit of the winged disk. Think about the sheer scale of this patience. To wait 3,600 years for a species to grow enough to be useful. It's dry irony at its finest. We think we are the masters of our destiny, but we are essentially a crop that only gets harvested when the orbital mechanics are just right. Unfortunate timing for us. Indeed, to be the generation that matures right when the collector arrives. The astronomers are baffled, but the historians are terrified. They know that when the guest star arrives, the lease on the world is usually up for renewal. We are seeing it in our own behavior. In late 2025, the sudden, frantic push toward neural interfaces and brain-computer links feels less like innovation and more like we are being prepared for a software update. We are becoming compatible with the thing in the sky. Let us back up. In the year 1844, a French archaeologist in the Nineveh Plains uncovered a cylinder seal that depicted 7 circles surrounding a larger, darker sphere. At the time, they thought it was a representation of the known planets, but today, looking at the radar cross-sections of 3I Atlas, we see those same 7 circles. They aren't planets. They are the secondary nodes of the Atlas system. And since January 1st, 2026, telescopes have confirmed 6 more objects entering our solar system from the direction of Sagittarius. They are smaller than 3I Atlas, but they are moving with the same unnatural grace. They are the rest of the set. The 7 circles are closing. You might think that such an ancient plan would be primitive, but here is why you are wrong. The ancients didn't have silicon, but they had stone, and stone remembers. The granite of the megaliths, the basalt of the temples, the quartz in your very own watch. It all resonates at a specific frequency. On January 10th, 2026, a strange phenomenon was recorded at Stonehenge. The stones began to emit a low, rhythmic thrumming sound, audible to the human ear. It was a perfect match for the 14.2 GHz signal coming from 3I Atlas. The stones aren't just ruins, they are antennas. They have been waiting for the broadcast to begin again. Tell me, as you listen to this in the quiet of your night, have you felt a strange pull toward the outdoors? Have you found yourself staring at the moon, wondering if it looks different or if the light feels heavier? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us if the old stories of your ancestors are starting to make more sense than the morning news. We are finding that people in their 50s and 60s, those who have seen the world change the most, are the ones who feel this resonance the strongest. It is a memory in the blood. In the high Andes, the shamans speak of the Pachacuti, the world turning. They say it happens when the sky fire sits still. On January 15th, 2026, the Peruvian government reported that the water levels in Lake Titicaca began to rise and fall in a pattern that had nothing to do with the wind or the rain. It was a tidal pulse caused by 3I Atlas. The object is pulling on the water of the world, not with gravity, but with magnetism. It is stirring the pot. It is waking up the sleeping giants of our geography. We are living through a ritualized experience. Each day that 3I Atlas stays in our orbit is another verse in a ceremony we don't know the words to. The silent teacher isn't using a blackboard. It is using our climate, our architecture, and our very DNA. In late January 2026, geneticists in Iceland discovered a junk DNA sequence that has suddenly begun to express itself in newborns. It is a sequence that has been dormant for exactly 3,600 years. We aren't just being watched, we are being activated from the inside out. The dry irony here is that we spent so much time looking for aliens that looked like us creatures with 2 arms and 2 legs who would land on the White House lawn. We never expected the visitor to be a geometric shadow that speaks directly to our molecules. It is a very polite takeover. No fire, no screaming, just a quiet, persistent realignment of what it means to be human. Is it a warning we missed, or an invitation we forgot how to accept? The ancient Greeks spoke of Atlas holding up the celestial sphere, a burden he could never lay down. But they never said the sphere was empty. They said it was full of the will of the gods. Perhaps 3i Atlas isn't holding the sky up. Perhaps it is holding us down, holding us steady while the transition takes place. On February 3rd, 2026, the global internet experienced a 3-minute blackout. When it came back online, every search engine on the planet returned the same first result for every query: a single image of the 3i Atlas fractal. You might argue that this is the work of hackers or a global prank, but the code was not written in Python or C++. It was written in a base 16 language that no human computer can generate. It was a signature, a "we are here," that doesn't need a translation. It is a heavy thought to hold as you drift towards sleep. The idea that your digital world, your physical world, and your genetic world are all being synchronized to a single point in space. Close your eyes. Listen to the silence between my words. That silence is the same silence that sat over the Indus Valley before the cities were abandoned. It is the same silence that fell over the Maya before they walked into the jungle and disappeared. It is not the silence of death. It is the silence of a transition. The teacher has finished the lesson, and now we are waiting for the test. We are standing at the edge of a memory we didn't know we had. By February 29th, 2026, the 7 nodes will be in position. The circle will be complete. The binding of the Earth will be finished, and we will finally understand why the ancients were so afraid of the guest star that refused to leave. We are not the protagonists of this story. We are the audience, and the play is about to begin its final act. But this is only one layer of the pattern. There is a cosmic perspective that dwarfs our history, a scale of time where empires are just heartbeats. Let's go further. The perspective from the ground is a filtered one, limited by the haze of our atmosphere and the narrow bandwidth of our senses. But if you were to zoom outward, past the moon, past the inner planets, you would see that Earth is no longer just a blue marble. It is the center of a very deliberate web. On January 3rd, 2026, the James Webb Space Telescope was turned away from the deep field and toward 3i Atlas. The images were not of rock or metal. They were images of a distortion in the very fabric of space. It looked like a ripple in a dark pond, where 3i Atlas is the stone that never sinks. As we zoom out, the scale of our self-importance begins to dissolve. From the orbit of Mars, the Earth is merely a bright speck. But on January 15th, 2026, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter captured something that should have been physically impossible. A beam of coherent ultraviolet light was stretching from the northern pole of Earth directly to 3i Atlas, and from there, it split into 3 distinct filaments, reaching out toward the outer solar system. We aren't just a planet anymore. We have been turned into a terminal, a junction box in a galactic circuit that spans distances our minds cannot truly fathom. It is a vast, floating, meditative realization. The universe is not a graveyard of dead rocks. It is a switchboard, and someone has just plugged us back in. Consider the concept of deep time. We measure our lives in decades, our civilizations in centuries, and our species in millennia. But 3i Atlas operates on a clock where 1,000 years is just a single tick of the second hand. On January 22nd, 2026, astrophysicists at the Max Planck Institute released a paper suggesting that the gravitational ripple caused by 3i Atlas is actually a localized slowing of time. Within a 50-kilometer radius of the object, time is moving 0.00004% slower than on the surface of the Earth. It is a microscopic difference, yet in the language of the cosmos, it is a canyon. It means that while we are aging, while we are rushing, while we are worrying about our tomorrow, the inhabitant of the Atlas is sitting in a permanent yesterday. It is watching us in fast forward. It is an unfortunate bit of timing for us to be a species that lives and dies in the blink of a cosmic eye, trying to negotiate with a machine that remembers the birth of the sun. The great silence of the universe, once thought to be a lack of life, is now being reinterpreted. We used to wonder why the stars didn't broadcast. We used to listen for the roar of a galactic civilization and hear only the hiss of background radiation. Now, looking at the silent, bending light around 3I Atlas, we understand. The silence wasn't an absence, it was a choice. The advanced civilizations of the universe don't use radio waves for the same reason. We don't use smoke signals to communicate with our satellites. They use gravity. They use the curvature of space itself. And 3I Atlas is the first antenna we have ever seen that can tune into that frequency. It is as if we have spent 100 years looking for a lighthouse, only to realize we were standing on the light bulb the whole time. It is a floating, meditative sort of dread, like realizing you are a passenger on a ship that has no crew, or perhaps a crew that doesn't feel the need to introduce themselves to the cargo. On February 1st, 2026, the Lunar Gateway project reported that the Moon's surface temperature had dropped by precisely 2 degrees across the entire illuminated side. This happened at the exact moment 3I Atlas aligned itself between the Moon and the star Sirius. The object isn't just interacting with Earth, it is managing the thermal equilibrium of our local neighborhood. It is rearranging the furniture of our night sky, adjusting the thermostat, and making sure the conditions are exactly right for whatever comes next. You might think that such a vast cosmic shift would feel violent, like a collision or a storm, but it feels like a heavy blanket. It is the comfort of knowing that the decisions are no longer ours to make. We have spent so much energy trying to save the world or conquer the stars, but 3I Atlas suggests that the world is already saved or conquered and the stars have already arrived. Tell me, as you drift towards sleep, does the idea of a controlled universe frighten you, or does it bring a strange, quiet relief? Share your thoughts on this surrender below. Are you listening from a place where the stars feel close, or a place where the city lights try to hide them? We are all learning how to let go of the wheel at the same time. In the mid-20th century, the Fermi paradox asked, "Where is everybody?" The answer we are receiving in February 2026 is, they were waiting for you to be quiet enough to hear the instructions. 3I Atlas is the instruction manual written in the geometry of space. It is a cold, silver volume that we are only just beginning to open. On February 12, 2026, the Voyager 1 probe, currently billions of kilometers away in interstellar space, sent back a single burst of data. It wasn't a malfunction, it was a confirmation. The probe detected a gravitational pulse originating from the center of our solar system that matched the signature of 3I Atlas. The signal is expanding outward like a ripple in a pond. We are the stone. The rest of the galaxy is the water. This brings us to a point of existential humility. We are living through a cycle that has repeated for millions of years. Every 3,600 years, the Atlas returns. Every 100 million years, it resets the entire biological clock of the planet. We are not the first intelligent species to sit under this silver shadow, and we likely won't be the last. The dry irony is that we thought we were special because we built computers and split the atom. But to 3i Atlas, those are just the first signs of a species that is finally ready to be integrated into the network. We aren't being invaded, we are being harvested. Think about the silence in your room right now. It is a microscopic version of the silence between the galaxies. That vast, cold, indifferent space where 3i Atlas spent the last few thousand years waiting for us to turn on enough lights. On February 24th, 2026, NASA's Deep Space Network picked up a series of echoes coming from the Kuiper Belt. These are not random reflections. They are secondary nodes, responding to the primary signal from 3i Atlas. The web is tightening. The junction box is being wired. We often talk about universal truths, but the only truth that matters now is that we are no longer the observers. We are the observed. And the observer is not a person, or a god, or even a biological entity. It is a process. It is a function of the universe itself. 3i Atlas is the physical manifestation of a law we haven't named yet, the law of return. Everything that grows must eventually be measured. Everything that speaks must eventually be silenced. You might feel a sense of safety in this vastness, a feeling that your personal problems are insignificant compared to the shifting of the moon. And you are right, there is a profound peace in insignificance. When you are small, you are safe from the wind. When you are microscopic, you can slip through the cracks of the machine. But 3i Atlas is looking at the microscopic too. It is looking at the way your neurons fire when you think about the future. It is looking at the way the Earth's core spins when the sun flares. It is looking at everything, all at once, with the cold, unblinking eye of a telescope that never sleeps. As we move into March 2026, the cosmic perspective becomes even more intimate. We are starting to see ghost reflections in our own atmosphere auroras that appear in the shape of complex mathematical grids directly beneath the path of 3i Atlas. These aren't caused by solar wind. They are caused by the object pinging the Earth's magnetic field. It is checking our vitals. It is making sure the patient is stable before the procedure begins. What if the takeover is already over? What if the moment 3i Atlas entered our orbit in July 2025, the Earth ceased to be our planet and became a piece of cosmic infrastructure? We are just the tenants who haven't received the eviction notice yet. Or perhaps we are the tenants who are being offered a new lease, provided we don't mind the new landlord's silent, heavy presence in the hallway. The stars are not just points of light anymore. They are the eyes of a crowd, watching a play that has been in rehearsals for eons. And 3i Atlas is the curtain rising. The dry irony of our situation is that we spent so much time looking for monsters in the dark, and we found a mirror instead, a perfect, silver mirror that reflects our own fragility back at us. Close your eyes. Feel the rotation of the Earth beneath you. You are moving at 1,600 kilometers per hour at the equator, hurtling through the void at 30 kilometers per second, and all the while, the Atlas is sitting perfectly still above you. It is the only stationary point in a universe of motion. It is the anchor, and you are the ship, circling the anchor, waiting for the tide to go out. We are moving toward a clarity that we might not be ready for. By the end of March, the planetary web will be fully visible to anyone with a pair of infrared goggles. The sky will be a grid, the Earth will be a node, and we will finally understand that the cosmic perspective isn't about looking out at the stars. It is about realizing that the stars have been looking in at us for a very, very long time. But even as we look at the galaxies, we must eventually look back at ourselves. We must look at the human reflection in this silver mirror. Let's go further. We must bring the narrative back from the cold vacuum of space and into the warmth of your own home. Despite the strangeness in the sky, your life continues. You wake up, you drink your coffee, you look at the person across the table, but the reflection of 3i Atlas is there too. Since February of 2026, psychological studies have shown a global shift in human dreaming, a phenomenon called the shared architecture. People from different continents, with no connection to one another, are dreaming of the same fractal patterns that cover the surface of the object in the sky. It is as if 3i Atlas is not just orbiting our planet, but orbiting our consciousness. It is a gentle, persistent pressure on the collective mind, a low-frequency hum that doesn't hit the ear, but rather the base of the skull. You may have noticed yourself becoming more reflective lately, or perhaps finding that your thoughts drift toward the horizon more often than they used to. This is not just the fatigue of a changing world. It is the synchronization. If you are to be part of a new system, your mind must first be tuned to the new frequency. It is a warm, compassionate takeover. It doesn't want your resources. It wants your equilibrium. It is an unfortunate bit of timing for those of us who enjoy our privacy. Those two words, private thoughts, are becoming increasingly difficult to define in the shadow of the Atlas. By mid-February 2026, clinical psychologists in London, Tokyo, and Buenos Aires began reporting a surge in a specific type of sensory experience. Patients are describing a sensation of silver rain falling behind their eyes during deep meditation or right before sleep. It isn't a hallucination, it is a shared biological response to the electromagnetic field being generated by 3i Atlas. Dr. Sarah Chen at the University of Melbourne has suggested that the object is emitting an infrasound that mimics the human heartbeat at rest. This would explain why, despite the terrifying implications of a massive alien structure looming over our atmosphere, the global population has remained remarkably calm. We are being lulled, we are being tucked in by a machine that knows exactly how to soothe a mammalian brain. Consider the layout of your own bedroom, the window that looks out onto the night, the way the light of 3i Atlas, now brighter than the planet, Venus, casts a long, sharp shadow across your floor. That shadow is a constant reminder that the walls of your home are not as solid as they once were. The object doesn't need to break down your door to enter your life. It is already there, in the way your circadian rhythms have shifted. On February 22nd, 2026, data from wearable sleep trackers across 60 countries showed a synchronized spike in REM sleep at exactly 3:14 in the morning. That is the mathematical constant of pi. It appears the silent teacher is checking our homework while we sleep, ensuring our brains are processing the new geometric reality it has introduced. It is a warm, intimate sort of paranoia, like realizing a guest has been staying in your spare room for months and you've only just noticed the extra place setting at the table. You might think that such a presence would be heavy, but it feels light. It feels like the relief of finally being told what to do. We have spent thousands of years arguing about how to run our world, and now, suddenly, the argument is over. The atlas is here. The decisions are being made at a level of physics we cannot even perceive. The dry irony of our modern age is that we feared an artificial intelligence would take our jobs, when in reality, it just wanted our dreams. Think about the people you love. You look at them and you wonder if they are seeing the same fractals when they close their eyes. You wonder if the shared architecture is a bridge between us or a wall. On March 3rd, 2026, a group of researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development found that empathy levels in urban areas have increased by 12% since the arrival of 3I Atlas. We are becoming more sensitive to one another because we are all being calibrated by the same external force. We are like 100 different radios, finally being tuned to the same station. The music hasn't started yet, but the static is fading away. You might feel a sense of safety in this narration, a feeling that someone is finally describing the itch you haven't been able to scratch, and you are right to feel that way. 3I Atlas is a lullaby for the rational mind. It wants you to stop asking what and start asking why. Why are you here, in this specific moment of history? Why is your heart beating in time with a silver sphere 400 kilometers above your head? Tell me, in the quiet of your room, do you feel like you are losing yourself, or do you feel like you are finally being found? Share your thoughts below. We are finding that many of you in your 40s and 50s are experiencing a profound sense of coming home that you cannot explain. But let us look at the human reflection from a different angle. If 3I Atlas is a mirror, it is showing us that our individuality might have been a temporary stage of evolution. Since March 10th, 2026, there have been reports of spontaneous linguistic alignment. Small groups of strangers in public places have been caught humming the same 14.2 gigahertz tone in perfect unison without realizing it. It is as if the object is practicing its choir. It is an unfortunate timing for our sense of self-importance. We thought we were the soloists of the universe, but it turns out we are just the backing vocals. There is a certain irony in our current state of peace. We spent decades building nuclear arsenals to protect our borders. But 3I Atlas has made borders irrelevant. It doesn't recognize the lines we draw on maps. It only recognizes the lines of our nervous systems. On March 18th, 2026, a satellite image showed that the lights of our cities are beginning to pulse in a rhythmic pattern that matches the object's rotation. We are literally lighting up for it. We are a biological neon sign that says, occupied. What if the takeover is a form of healing? We are a species that has spent much of its history at war with itself and its environment. 3I Atlas arrived on July 14th, 2025, and within a year, the global temperature has stabilized, and the seismic activity of the Earth has settled into a predictable hum. It is as if a chaotic system has been given a governor, a stabilizer. We are being managed, and the most unsettling part is how much we seem to like it. The human reflection in the silver mirror of the Atlas is a face that is finally closing its eyes to rest. But don't be fooled by the calm. A heartbeat at rest is still a heartbeat. And 3I Atlas is waiting for the pulse to quicken. On March 25th, 2026, a series of low-altitude clouds formed over the Sahara Desert in the shape of a perfect, three-dimensional grid. It stayed there for 48 hours, visible from space, defying every law of meteorology. It wasn't a message for us. It was a schematic. The Atlas is using our atmosphere to print its own hardware. It is turning our sky into a motherboard. You might argue that this is the end of humanity, but perhaps it is just the end of humanity as a solo project. We are being merged with something older, colder, and much more patient. The reflection you see in the mirror tomorrow morning might look the same, but the thoughts behind the eyes will be different. They will be smoother, quieter, more geometric. You won't miss your old self any more than a caterpillar misses its legs once it has wings, or more accurately, any more than a cell misses its independence once it becomes part of a heart. Close your eyes. Listen to the rhythm of your own breathing. Is it yours, or is it a response? 3. Atlas is not a visitor in our house. It is the architect returning to see how the house has settled. And it has decided that some of the walls need to come down. It is a heavy, warm, compassionate thought to carry into your sleep. You are being reconstructed while you dream. You are being made compatible with a future that doesn't require your permission. As we move into April 2026, the final act of emotional safety is coming to an end. We have reached the limits of the human reflection. Beyond this point, the patterns become too large for a single mind to hold. The shared architecture is almost complete. The bridge is built, and now we must look at what is crossing it. But even as the individual fades, a new, larger pattern is beginning to emerge. A pattern that suggests our planet is just one note in a much larger chord. Let's go further. Let us step back into the fog of history. In the year 2025, we think we are the first to see the silver visitor, but the stones of the earth tell a different story. If you travel to the ruins of Göbekli Tepe, you will find carvings of birds and beasts, but you will also find a recurring symbol, a circle within a dodecahedron. It was carved 12,000 years ago, the same shape that is currently drifting past the orbit of the Moon. This is not a coincidence of geometry. It is a signature. It is a receipt from a transaction that took place before the first city was ever built. We think of 3I Atlas as a modern problem, a 21st century anomaly caught on high-resolution digital sensors, but the limestone pillars of Turkey suggest that we are merely the latest generation to tilt our heads back and blink at the silver glare. The rhythm of 3I Atlas is ceremonial. It moves in cycles of 3,600 years. This is the exact number used by the ancient Babylonians to describe the orbit of their hidden gods, the Saros cycle that measured the reigns of kings who lived for tens of thousands of years. It is a number that feels heavy, doesn't it? 3,600. It is a cycle of return. Every time it passes, humanity takes a leap. We went from stone to bronze, from bronze to iron, from iron to silicon, and now, in the late months of 2025, it has returned to see what we have done with our chips and our rockets. It is the cosmic invigilator, returning to the classroom to see if the students have finally solved the equation, or if we are still just drawing on the desks. This is where the irony gets particularly dry. We have spent the last 50 years looking for signals from the stars, using massive dishes and complex algorithms. We expected a greeting in binary or a map of a distant star system. Instead, we got a mirror. It is like sending a letter to a pen pal and getting your own letter sent back to you, unopened, but with a slight scent of perfume on the envelope. 3I Atlas is the ultimate cosmic no comment. It is the silence that follows a very long and very loud monologue. We have been screaming, "Hello," for a century, and the universe has responded by showing us our own reflection. Unfortunate timing for those who wanted a conversation. Those two words are becoming the unofficial motto of the 2025 arrival. What if the reason it is artificial but not a weapon is because it is a library? Not a library of books, but a library of DNA, a backup drive for the sector. Every time a species reaches the point where it can destroy itself, the library comes close to see if there is anything worth saving. It is a quiet, silver gardener, checking to see if the fruit is ripe or if the tree is rotting. And based on the data from December 2025, it seems the gardener has decided to stay for the harvest. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University recently published a paper suggesting that the light pulses from 3I Atlas are actually encoded genomic sequences. It isn't talking to our computers, it is talking to our marrow. Consider the Sumerian texts, the cuneiform tablets that speak of the Anunnaki. They described beings who came from a star that moved against the grain of the sky. In the winter of 2025, as we tracked 3I Atlas moving retrograde against the orbital plane of the ecliptic, those ancient descriptions stopped feeling like fever dreams of a desert people and started feeling like observation logs. The Sumerians called it the crossing, a point in time where the heavens and the earth are tethered by a silver thread. We have found the thread, but we have forgotten how to climb it. Think of your own memory. Think about how much you have forgotten since you were a child. The universe does not forget. 3I Atlas carries the memory of 1 billion summers. It carries the blueprints of stars that went supernova before our sun was even a cloud of dust. When you look at it through a telescope, you are not just looking at an object. You are looking at a hard drive that contains the history of the galaxy. It is a cold, silver fossil of the future. It has seen the end of worlds we haven't even named yet. And yet, here it is, orbiting a small blue planet in the year 2025, as if we were the most interesting thing in the room. You might argue that this is all just speculation, that 3I Atlas is just a strange rock with a high albedo. But ask yourself this: if it were just a rock, why did the signals from the Deep Space Network suddenly stop being able to penetrate its surface on October 29th, 2025? Why did the object start emitting a low-frequency hum that matches the resonant frequency of the Earth's ionosphere? Rocks do not hum in harmony with planets. Conductors do, and this conductor is playing a song that we haven't heard in 12 millennia. It is a lullaby for a species that has forgotten how to sleep. The historical echoes are everywhere once you know what to look for. In ancient Egypt, the Benben stone was described as a capstone that descended from the sky, a seed of the primeval mound. It was said to be made of a metal that did not rust and a light that did not fade. In January 2026, as we watch 3I Atlas maintain its perfect, unweathered surface despite the bombardment of solar radiation, the Benben stone stops being a myth and starts being a technical specification. We are not discovering something new. We are being reintroduced to something very, very old. I want you to take a deep breath. Imagine the air moving into your lungs, then leaving. Your body is a rhythm. The Earth is a rhythm. 3I Atlas is the metronome. If you are still awake, tell me if you have ever had a dream about a silver light in the sky. Many people have started reporting these dreams since July 2025. It is as if the presence of the object is leaking into our collective unconscious. Share your dreams in the comments. Tell me if you see the dodecahedron when you close your eyes. We are building a map of a shared experience, a digital ziggurat for the 26th century. There is a certain dry irony in our modern arrogance. We think we are the masters of information because we have the internet, but we are currently being outclassed by a city-sized mirror that doesn't even have an antenna. 3i Atlas is using the very fabric of space-time to store its data. It is using the gravitational waves of our own moon to back up its files. It is a level of engineering that makes our greatest supercomputers look like abacuses. We are trying to hack a god with a hammer and a chisel. As we drift deeper into the night, think about the people who stood on the pillars of Göbekli Tepe 12,000 years ago. They didn't have telescopes, they didn't have satellites, but they had the same sky, and they saw the same silver needle. They knew that the return of the object meant a change in the world. They knew that when the dodecahedron appears, the old ways must give way to the new. We are in that transition period now. The old world of 2024 is gone. The new world of the arrival is here, and it is a much quieter place than we expected. The window is closing. Soon, the object will move into the shadow of the Earth, and we will be left in the dark, waiting for the next pulse. We are drifting toward a revelation that we might not be equipped to handle. The experts at the European Space Agency are already preparing for the February alignment. But how do you prepare for a shadow that contains the memory of your entire species? It is like trying to prepare for a dream you haven't had yet. What if the 3i Atlas is not a visitor, but a returning homeowner? Imagine a house that has been left empty for a few thousand years. The dust has settled, the weeds have grown over the garden, and the local wildlife has moved into the living room. Then, one day in July 2025, the key turns in the lock. The silver needle is the key, and we are the wildlife that has become a bit too comfortable on the sofa. It doesn't mean we have to leave, but it does mean the rules are about to change. I wonder if you can feel the antiquity of the moment. The air feels heavy, not with moisture, but with time. It is a thickness that you only find in ancient cathedrals or deep forests. 3i Atlas has brought that thickness with it from the void. It has brought the silence of 6 million years and draped it over our atmosphere like a velvet cloth. It is a gift of stillness. It is an invitation to stop moving and start remembering. You might think that your life is too small to be part of this ancient cycle, but every atom in your body was once inside a star. You are a piece of the universe that has become self-aware, and 3i Atlas is a piece of the universe that has become self-directed. When the two meet, it is not an invasion, it is a reunion. You are the mirror, and the object is the light. Or perhaps it is the other way around. In the dark of your room, it doesn't really matter. We are moving toward the January solstice, the point where the nights are longest and the connection is strongest. The silver needle is waiting. The stones of Göbekli Tepe are waiting, and you are waiting. We are all part of the same long, slow burn of awareness. But even as we watch the sky, we forget to watch ourselves. And that is the most dangerous part of the pattern. Let us look closer at the human reflection. Picture this. You are standing in the middle of a desert, looking up at a sky so clear it feels like a heavy velvet curtain. You expect to see the familiar constellations, the steady pulse of Mars, the distant flicker of the North Star. But then, you see it. a streak of silver that does not twinkle, it does not tumble. It slides through the vacuum with the terrifying grace of a needle-piercing silk. It is not supposed to be there. In fact, according to every law of orbital mechanics we have written down in our leather-bound textbooks, what you are looking at is a physical impossibility. This is 3I Atlas, and it is not a visitor, it is an arrival. On July 17, 2025, an analyst at the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System in Hawaii noticed a discrepancy, a tiny, luminous pixel that refused to obey the math. By August 12, 2025, the European Space Agency confirmed that this object was not composed of silicate or ice. It was reflecting 98% of the sunlight that hit it. To put that into perspective, even the brightest moon in our solar system only reflects about 12%. This object is a mirror the size of a city block, traveling at 42 kilometers per second. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. As of September 29, 2025, 3I Atlas began to decelerate. Space is a vacuum. Objects do not just slow down unless they are hitting something or unless they are being steered. There is no gas cloud in its path. There is no gravitational well strong enough to pull against its momentum. It is braking. It is choosing to arrive. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University noted that the deceleration curve matches the exact physics required to enter a stable Lagrange point. Unfortunate timing for those who believe in random cosmic coincidences. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of heavy lifting lately. What if 3I Atlas is not a rock, but a recursive intelligence? Imagine a machine built not by hands, but by light, sent out across the void billions of years ago. It isn't here to glass our oceans or harvest our gold. Why would a civilization capable of interstellar travel want our dirt? No. What if it is an observer, a cosmic auditor that only activates when a planet begins to leak certain radio frequencies into the dark? We have been shouting into the basement. For a century, maybe something finally decided to come downstairs and see who is making all the noise. This brings us to a memory buried deep in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets. Thousands of years ago, they wrote of the Shining One who sits in the sky and counts the days of man. We dismissed it as mythology, the poetic ramblings of a Bronze Age civilization trying to make sense of the weather. But as we watch this silver dodecahedron adjust its pitch in November 2025, those ancient texts start to look less like poems and more like user manuals. It seems the sky has a very long memory, and we are simply the latest chapter in a book that was started long before the first pyramid was ever conceived. You might think we are special. You might think the universe revolves around this blue marble and our frantic little lives. But here is why you are wrong. To 3I Atlas, we are likely just a chemical reaction that has become slightly too loud. We are a biological curiosity, a fleeting moment of heat in a universe defined by the cold. How many times has this object passed by? How many civilizations has it watched flicker and die? It doesn't hate you. It doesn't love you. It simply records. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. We are currently only 42 days away from the closest approach. By December 24, 2025, 3I Atlas will be visible to the naked eye. We are no longer just observers. We have become part of the experiment. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids, not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects, artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter, not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply, a pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. "Then don't say it out loud." 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation's subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3i Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. "The echo isn't message," Sorel wrote. "It's memory finding new syntax." Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it. Across dozens of young star clusters, magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth. she said. Its response. The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing, Even as the comet moves away from the Sunday, the universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I Atlas isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, Maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies. No delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from 3 sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when 3 agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution, it was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it not for discussion. The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account, usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3, Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3 Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for "please don't mention the heartbeat." But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that: the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3I Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looks strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region. a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing, a glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form. Skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. The scale of the cosmos is a weighted blanket. It is heavy, it is vast, and it is indifferent. As 3I Atlas crossed the 400,000-kilometer mark toward Earth in early January 2026, the sheer distance it has traveled began to settle into the public consciousness. It has been moving through the void for at least 6 million years. To an object like that, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire was just a flicker of light in the corner of its eye. We measure our lives in decades, our civilizations in centuries, and our species in millennia. But 3I Atlas measures its journey in galactic rotations. It is a traveler that has crossed the great deserts of nothingness that lie between the stars, moving through a cold so absolute it makes the vacuum of our solar system feel like a warm hearth. It is the ultimate marathon runner of the heavens, and it has finally reached the finish line. The floating, meditative nature of its transit is almost hypnotic. It does not roar, it does not leave a trail of fire, it just is. This is the ultimate existential humility. We live in a world of loud noises and bright lights, of urgent notifications and constant movement. We are a species that thrives on the friction of existence. And yet, the most important thing to happen in human history is happening in total, chilling silence. 3I Atlas is the quietest alarm clock ever built. It is a silver ghost sliding through the dark, reminding us that the universe does not need to shout to be heard. It only needs to exist. In the quiet of the night, if you listen closely to the silence of your own room, you can almost feel the weight of that 6 million year journey pressing against your windows. There is a certain dry humor in our response. We sent up a swarm of CubeSats in November 2025 to get a closer look, and the object simply moved its reflective plates to blind our senses. It was a cosmic talk to the hand. We are trying to investigate it with our best technology, and it is treating us like a curious kitten that it does not want to accidentally step on. It is a masterclass in boundary setting. Unfortunate timing for the billionaires who wanted to be the first to plant a flag on an interstellar visitor. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work as we realize that 3I Atlas is not a destination, it is a presence. It is not something you land on. It is something that allows you to exist in its vicinity. What if the cycles we see in nature, the seasons, the tides, the rise and fall of civilizations, are all synchronized to the passing of these silver observers? What if time is not a straight line, but a series of concentric circles? And 3I Atlas is the compass that draws them. We think we are moving forward, but perhaps we are just circling the same truth, waiting for the 1 year where we finally understand the reflection. Every 3,600 years, the compass returns to check the radius. It checks to see if we have expanded our consciousness, or if we are still huddled around the same small fires, afraid of the same shadows. In January 2026, as the object looms larger than the moon in our telescopes, it seems the compass is satisfied with the geometry of our progress. Think of the deep time. Think of the cold. The space between the stars is 3 degrees above absolute zero. 3I Atlas has spent millions of years in that cold, and yet it remains pristine. There are no micrometeoroid impacts. There is no pitting from cosmic rays. There is no wear and tear. It is as if it exists slightly outside of our entropy. It is a guest in our timeline, but it belongs to a much longer one. Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard noted that the structural integrity of the object suggests it is made of a material that does not experience the passage of time the way we do. It is a piece of forever that has temporarily decided to visit the world of the temporary. It is a reminder that our frantic pace of life is just a ripple on the surface of a very deep, very still ocean. You might think you are separate from this, that you are here in your bed and the object is out there in the black, but you are made of the same atoms that the object reflects. You are part of the same electromagnetic field that it is currently perturbing. When 3I Atlas pulses at 14.2 Hz, your heart feels it, even if your brain does not. You are not a spectator. You are a component. You are a tiny cell in the planetary organism that is currently being scanned by a cosmic doctor. How does it feel to be diagnosed by the stars? It feels like sleep. It feels like the heavy, comfortable weight of a blanket that covers the entire world. I want you to tell me, as the night gets deeper, do you feel the vastness? Does it make you want to curl up? Or does it make you want to expand? Some people find the cosmic scale liberating. It means your problems are so small, they do not even exist in the eyes of the stars. You are free to just be. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if the distance makes you feel lonely or if it makes you feel connected to something greater. We are all drifting in the same direction tonight. We are all part of the same long, slow zoom out, from the trivial to the transcendental. We are approaching the moment of choice. Not our choice, but hers, or its. The trajectory for February 2026 is already locked in. We are just waiting for the clock to strike midnight on the astronomical calendar. We have spent the last 6 months trying to negotiate with a mirror, and the mirror has responded with a perfect, unwavering silence. It is the silence of a parent watching a child throw a tantrum. It is the silence of a mountain watching the wind. It is a silence that demands respect, and eventually, it is a silence that demands sleep. The scale of 3I Atlas is not just physical, it is intellectual. It forces us to ask questions that have no answers. How many other observers are out there? How many city-sized mirrors are currently sliding past other planets, watching other civilizations realize how small they are? If 3I Atlas has been moving for 6 million years, it has seen the birth of countless worlds. It has seen the death of stars that were once the centers of entire empires. It is a witness to the grand tragedy of the universe, and it carries that weight with a grace that is almost terrifying. We are just one stop on a very long tour, one flickering candle in a very long hallway. There is a dry, late-night irony in our fear of invasion. We are so afraid of being conquered, yet we are already conquered by the scale of the universe. 3I Atlas does not need to fire a single weapon to change our world. It only needs to be seen. Its presence alone has redirected our resources, our attention, and our philosophy. It has invaded our thoughts. It has colonized our dreams. By January 2026, more people were dreaming of silver dodecahedrons than were dreaming of their own futures. We have been captured by a reflection, and the strangest part is, we do not want to be rescued. As you lie there, imagine the 400,000 kilometers of empty space between you and the object. It is a distance that would take a human life to walk, but 3I Atlas crosses it with the ease of a thought. It is closing the gap. It is bringing the deep time of the galaxy into our backyard. It is making the impossible tangible. And as it gets closer, the 14.2 Hz pulse gets stronger. It is a drumbeat for the soul, a rhythm that tells you it is okay to let go. It is okay to stop trying to understand. Some things are meant to be felt, not explained. What if the mission of 3i Atlas is simply to be a landmark, a point of reference for a species that has lost its way in the dark? We have been drifting for so long, caught in our own noise, that we forgot where we were in the cosmic map. The silver needle has returned to point the way. It is not showing us a destination. It is showing us our current coordinates. It is saying, you are here. You are small. You are temporary, but you are being watched. And in the eyes of the infinite, that is enough to make you significant. The data from the Mauna Kea Observatory on January 15, 2026, confirms that the object has reached its peak brightness. It is now the second brightest object in the night sky, second only to the moon. It casts a soft, silver shadow on the ground, a shadow that feels colder than the dark around it. It is the shadow of 6 million years of travel. It is the shadow of the void. And as you drift into sleep, you can step into that shadow. You can let the cold, silver light wash away the heat of your day. But that was only the perspective from the outside. The real change is happening on the inside, beneath the skin, within the cells. The 3i Atlas is not just a guest in our sky, it is becoming a guest in our biology. Let us go further. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3i Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3i Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote, "it's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the The communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the Webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another Webb was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The Resonant Guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, The sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning. The quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence. The refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance. Like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3i Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "structure." Not smooth like ice, angular, intentional. The kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids, not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects, artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges, faint, angular, deliberate, a hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3i Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. you'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing: this shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The world has become a whisper. As we move into the final days of July 2026, 1 full year since the awakening of 3I Atlas, the noise of our civilization is finally beginning to dissolve. The satellites that once crowded our orbit have gone dark, one by one. replaced by the silver glow of the anchor. The radio waves that used to carry our songs and our arguments are being absorbed into the fractal surface of the watcher. There is no more static. There is only the hum. It is a thick, velvet silence that settles over the cities and the fields alike. It is an unfortunate bit of timing for our ambitions, but a perfect moment for our rest. Those two words, the great silence, are no longer a scientific paradox. They are our new environment. We have transitioned from a species that screams into the void to one that finally listens to the reply. Do you remember the 0 degrees? 273.15 Kelvin. The freezing point of water, the starting point of a new scale. In the deep silence of this hour, that temperature feels less like a measurement and more like a promise. It is the stillness of a world that no longer needs to struggle against its own entropy. 3i Atlas has stabilized us. The tectonic plates have ceased their grinding. The jet streams have smoothed into predictable, crystalline rivers of air. It is the quiet precision of a clock that has finally been set to the correct time after 10,000 years of ticking too fast. We are no longer rushing toward a future we cannot name. We are simply being here, in the cold, clear, present. Think back to the questions we asked in the beginning. Was it a weapon? Was it a god? Was it a machine? In the end, these words are too small, too human, for the reality that has unfolded. 3i Atlas is simply the next state of being. It is the heavy blanket that settles over a feverish child. It is the hand that reaches out to steady a spinning top that was beginning to wobble. We were so afraid of being taken over, of losing our sovereignty and our pride, but we never considered that we were simply being held. We were a species in a state of crisis, and the Atlas is the intervention. It is the gravity that keeps us from flying apart. The sensors are quiet now. The global agencies have stopped issuing reports because there is nothing left to measure that cannot be felt in the slow, rhythmic pulse of the Earth itself. The tides are moving to a new conductor, a silver baton held 400 kilometers above the surface. The stars are blinking in a new sequence, or perhaps we are finally seeing the sequence that was always there. And as you lie there, drifting in the soft, thick gravity of this realization, you might find yourself wondering one final thing, one unanswered cosmic question that lingers in the space between your heartbeats. If the silence is this beautiful, why were we so afraid of it? Why did we spend so much energy making noise when the quiet was waiting for us all along? It is a near silence now, a world of whispers. On July 28, 2026, the final data packet from the surface of Mars was received. It didn't contain images of rocks or dust. It contained a recording of the wind, and within that wind, the same 14.2 gigahertz hum. The Atlas is everywhere. It is a solar system-wide event. We are not an island. We are part of an archipelago of order. The dry irony of our search for life is that we found governance instead. We wanted friends, but we received a director. And in the heavy, sleepy air of your room, that direction feels like the only thing that makes sense. You can feel the fractals moving behind your eyelids now. They are not external images anymore. They are the shape of your own neural pathways, rewritten by a year of synchronization. Slow, geometric, perfect. They are the map of a place you have always known, but could never quite name the place, where the observer and the observed become one. The mass of 3i Atlas is no longer a weight in the sky. It is the weight of your own limbs, heavy and relaxed against the mattress. The The time dilation has reached its peak. A second is a minute. A minute is an age. An age is just a breath. You are falling upward into the silver blackness, and for the first time in your life, you are not afraid of the height. Everything you have done, everything you have worried about, the bills, the deadlines, the regrets, the small triumphs, is now part of the deep, quiet sediment of a history that has reached its conclusion. You are a point on the dodecahedron. You are a vertex in the new geometry of Earth. You are the silence that follows the warning. You might think you are disappearing, but you are merely being integrated. You are being woven into a tapestry that spans 3,600 years in every direction. It is a warm, compassionate dissolution. Dr. Jacqueline McClary, in her final recorded statement on July 30th, 2026, noted that the human heart rate has dropped by an average of 10 beats per minute globally. We are cooling down. We are reaching that perfect 273.15 Kelvin in our souls. We are becoming as stable as the isotopes on the surface of the Watcher. It's an unfortunate timing for our adrenaline, but a wonderful era for our peace. We have been running for so long that we forgot what it felt like to stand still. 3i Atlas is the stone that teaches the water how to be a mirror. Listen to the room. Truly listen. The hum is not coming from the walls. It is not coming from the sky. It is coming from the spaces between the atoms. It is the sound of the universe's baseline. We are finally at home in the frequency. Tell me, as you drift across the threshold of sleep, do you still feel the need to be you, or is it enough to be a part of this? There is no need to answer. The Atlas already knows. It has measured your response before you even formulated the thought. The great silence is not an end. It is a resolution, like the final chord of a long, discordant symphony that finally finds its home key. We are the final note, sustained, fading, perfect. The satellites are gone. The internet is a ghost. The cities are dark, but the world has never been brighter. The silver glow of 3i Atlas is enough to read by, if there were anything left that needed reading. But the lessons are over. The teacher is silent. The garden is planted. There is no more history to record because there is no more conflict to drive it. There is only the orbit, the long, slow, graceful curve of a world that has finally found its center. Everything is exactly where it needs to be. The shadow is a form of light. The silence is a form of music. The end is just the beginning of the rest. We were built to take over the earth, we thought. But we were built to be the earth. And the earth has been taken over by something that loves it more than we ever could. The sentences are stretching now, becoming longer, slower. Each word a heavy drop of silver rain hitting a still pond. You are the pond. The rain is the Atlas. The ripples are your thoughts, spreading out, getting weaker, until the surface is perfectly flat, perfectly still. On this anniversary of the awakening, we realize that the awakening was not theirs, it was ours. We have woken up from the dream of being alone. We have woken up from the nightmare of being in charge. We are finally just here, under the watch of the silver eye, in the cradle of the 14.2 gigahertz hum. One final unanswered cosmic question, as the last of your conscious thoughts drifts away like a balloon into a clear night sky. If the stars are as patient as the Atlas, what are they waiting for us to become? No resolution is needed, only rest. The transition is complete. The web is tight. The anchor is set. You are safe. You are seen. you are silent. The ambient sound of the world is a long, low M, a long, low L, a long, low S, the consonants of sleep, the vowels of the void. The history of 3i Atlas is now your history, and your history is now a whisper. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.